How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the next edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with Kyle Glass. He is one of the co-founders of the ProTri News. If you haven't heard of them, you got to make sure to go check them out. They will be in the show notes and such. But Kyle has an awesome story. Has come from a military family, was moved around the world quite a bit. Grew up in Italy for 6 years and has a lot of multicultural experiences that he's able to share. And then just an awesome testimony about who he is and where he has ended up and where he is wanting to go. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Glass. Huge giveaway alert. First of all, thank you so much to Synergy Wetsuits for sponsoring today's episode. It is awesome because they are giving away the Sin Skin 3, which is a state-of-the-art swim skin that will make you faster when you are in the water coming into T1. So here's how you enter that. First of all, there will be a link to our Instagram in the show notes listing out these 5 different things you got to do to get in on the giveaway. But they are, first, you got to follow Stupid Questions and Synergy Wetsuits on Instagram. You got to like the giveaway post, tag 3 friends in the comments, sign up for our email newsletter at stupidquestions.show. There's a link at the top of the website and at the bottom where you can drop your email there. And then the 5th thing is leave a review of the podcast on your preferred platform of choice. And again, that link is going to be in the show notes. Go check it out on our Instagram page, Stupid Questions Podcast, Instagram, and it'll be pinned at the top of that Instagram as well. So thank you so much to Synergy for sponsoring today's episode and partnering with us on this giveaway. I look forward to seeing who is going to win. Kyle Glass.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I've dated a few girls in my life, and I've never been let down so many times in trying to reschedule a date, but I think this is number, what was it? Was it 4 times we had to reschedule? Not really your fault.
We might be a whole hand. I think we're a whole hand at this point.
Really? 5?
Yeah.
Man.
But that's on me. I mean, between
tornadoes,
we had tornadoes.
Yeah.
I had work meetings come up. I had travel. And now we're finally able to make it happen. So
I almost wanted to reschedule because it was the eclipse today, and the amount of conspiracy theories that were rolling around my feed, it was hilarious. Did you get any of that stuff?
I got some of the stuff. I love conspiracies.
Dude, me too.
Because I'm like I like thinking like really big sometimes. And so all of I just eat all those up. Now, if there might be like a sliver of truth in any of those, but
sure.
They were fun to just like read and be like, interesting.
No, dude, that was me. I was all about the FEMA camps underneath every connected Walmart under tunnels in the United States back when I was in college. Like my friends, I was telling them, like, guys, this is it. It's all coming down. Get ready. We're heading to the mountains. There's nowhere to live except off grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun stuff. What is your favorite conspiracy theory? Doesn't mean you have to believe it.
My favorite one, which I sometimes believe and I think may be true, is that we never landed on the moon in the 60s or whenever they say that we went.
There's a lot of compelling evidence back and forth.
The biggest thing is just like why we went and never went back. I think that we potentially may have gone between like maybe the 80s, 90s area. And so back in the 60s, I think that it was just a massive plan to bankrupt the Russians.
Yeah.
And it worked. But that's still one that I'm like, I just don't think that that we went.
Super fascinating. You are a YouTube consumer, I would assume.
Yeah, I love YouTube.
Have you heard of the channel Smarter Every Day?
No, I haven't. I'm going to have to add it.
Okay, so this guy, I love like sciencey stuff. Destin Sandlin, he worked for, I think, NASA and the Defense Department for a while. Anyway, he got asked recently on one of his videos, he posted this 40-minute long video. I know this is totally not podcast related, but I'm going into it. He did this 40-long video where he got asked to speak at NASA, kind of to like a raw motivational speech.
Yeah.
And he basically got up there and he's like, and these are all like heads of departments and of different missions within NASA and JPL and, Lockheed Martin, all these guys. And he gets up there and he's basically like lays out in a mathematical format, like, hey, here's why your Artemis program, which was our Get to the Moon program that has, been underway. He's like, this makes no sense because I think it was something like, just for one example, he showed that in order to get the lunar lander, so their plan is to basically send it up into orbit. It's up there, and then the amount of fuel needed to get from that orbit then to the moon and back is something like 80 full like fuel refills, basically like the max your amount able to like shoot into space and then load and then send it off. So he's like, it doesn't even make sense. Like this program, everybody's rah-ing, they're making all these videos, but from a scientific standpoint, it's a complete wash. So I was like, oh, well, that's it. We never actually went. So
we never actually went. You mean to tell the biggest thing as well is I love watching sports sometimes on my phone. I'll be like out in public or whatever, and I'm like, oh, I want to watch this race and stuff like that. And it'll buffer. And you're just like, we were able to live stream a moon landing in the 60s.
In the 60s.
But I can't watch the Oklahoma Sooners score a touchdown in 2023 on my phone. Come on.
It's a little, the computer on the Saturn V, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's basically like an entire ring around this giant thing. It was just a bunch of copper wires twisted together. Anyway,
Crazy.
Wild stuff.
Well, it's a heck of a way to start a podcast.
I know, man. It's great. And that's the way I love it. So thank you, first of all, for making the time. I will have already done a little intro so people know a little bit of who you are. But who doesn't know who Kyle Glass is? He's the backbone of modern day triathlon ProTri news, right? So do you even need an introduction?
Sometimes I'll like go to races and stuff. Like it just happened this last weekend, and someone was like, "I know your voice, but I don't know like you or who you are or your face or whatever."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm just that face that you see like at every race for the last decade plus. That's just like cheering everyone on and just rooting for basically everyone. Like I don't care if you're in 5th place or 8th place or 1st place. Like I'm gonna cheer for you and till the end. So. This will be good because I feel like I haven't done a podcast really explain. Like people always are shocked when they find out that I have a job outside of ProTri News. They're always shocked whenever they find out like I live in Oklahoma. They're shocked whenever people just find out like more things about you. So hopefully this podcast gets a bunch of downloads. It's not just my mom.
Yeah.
And then people will be like, wow, now I know about Kyle Glass.
That's the goal, right? I mean, you can throw it up on ProTri News. Who is Kyle Glass? And then everyone will get to know you.
Yeah, that's good.
So that is actually my first question, though. So who is Kyle Glass?
I am a person that loves the Lord. I'm a person that continues to fail, but the Lord's grace has continued to wash over me and allowed me to continue to live each and every day like it's my last. I've always been the kind of person that I feel like gives a whole lot of energy to a whole lot of things. And I like to end the day when I lay my head down, usually around 10 p.m., 10:30. I reflect on my day. And I say, did I give 100% to each and everything that I did today? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's not. But then I wake up in the morning, do my quiet time, and try and do it all over again.
Yeah. So that quiet time, is that literally just you sitting there having like silence and letting come what may? Or are you meditating on a certain thing or reading something? Or
typically, I'm currently reading the Bible recap. So each day it's basically working through the Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelations. And basically you just read what her blurb is for the day and then get in the Word and open the Bible and read through that chapter. And then kind of some reflection and prayer around that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
A lot of great books out there. So who is God to you? Who is the Lord to you? Like when did this come into Kyle's life and how is it today?
So, my parents were divorced whenever I was really young. I have 4 great parents. I have mom, dad, stepmom, stepdad. They're fantastic, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. When I was a teenager, I went randomly to this church camp, and John Piper was preaching, and Switchfoot was the band.
Oh, and come on.
It was like the biggest of spiritual highs. And I went there, and that's when I first confessed my love for the Lord and that I wanted to live for something more than just myself. And after that, kind of just like took that spiritual high, was baptized, and then kind of went about my normal life. I never really went to church or anything after that. And so I feel like I didn't really have a solid foundation.
Sure.
And kind of throughout that whole journey, struggled and didn't really understand what it meant to be a follower of Christ. And then moved to Oklahoma, met my buddy Talbot Cox, and we basically went to church together all throughout high school, college. We kind of bounced around, did our own things, and then
Broke up for a little bit.
Yeah, 2014, we were actually we were baptized together.
Cool.
So that was super special, and that's whenever I fully started to understand what it meant to follow the Lord, and it's preaching the gospel, sharing kind of your testimony, and as it tells us in Matthew, to proclaim that the Lord is King and baptize believers to believe that.
Yeah. So what led to that 2014 kind of decision? You said you kind of, I forget exactly what you said, but it became real to you. Like you started to have a deeper understanding. Like what led to that, you think?
I think it was just more time in the Bible. I mean, I never really spent a whole lot of time just like reading the Bible. And Talbot's brother was in seminary school, and he had us we went through, I think it was like 10 or 12 lessons, and we're really just like dived into the word. And it was just a kind of a crazy moment that I was just like, I think I need to be baptized again, because I didn't fully grasp what baptism meant when I was a 14-year-old. And I've lived so much life since then over the last 10 years that now I fully understand that God is the Trinity. It's God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit all in one that kind of live in us. And God died, was buried, raised again, so that we can have newness of life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful story. So practically, some people who are listening probably have never truly explored what it means to like talk to God or hear God's voice. And one of my favorite questions growing up as a kid that I loved asking people, and I'm still kind of figuring out, is, and I remember actually asking my dad this when I was pretty young. It's like, Dad, you say like you feel impressed or you feel God talk to you, but what does that actually mean? Because like I'm a very visual and auditory person, so I'm like wanting to hear something. And so he answered the question, and I'm happy to go into that. But I would love to hear, like, for you, have you found like how God usually speaks to you?
Usually it's through His Word. I'll just be going through the Bible and I'll see something that kind of catches my eye. A lot of that is just through repetition. Like I'll read a verse, I don't know, probably 10, 15 times before it actually starts to like resonate or get buried into my brain of like, this is what it means. And the Lord's trying to speak to you in this moment about a specific thing. So it changes and it varies a lot for myself. The biggest experience that I've had with the Lord is back in 2018. I was hit by a car on my bike. They ran a stop sign, destroyed me. I was basically, I lost all function in my left arm, and had a friend pray for me and pray healing over my arm. And I was one of those people that was like, healing doesn't happen anymore. Like healings don't happen anymore. That's something that was in the Bible 2,000 years ago, and those things did happen. But it's just, I just don't know if I believe that the Lord still does that. And the Lord revealed Himself to me in that. And Talbot's brother actually was there for that, Carter, and they prayed over my arm, and then they were like, "Okay, raise your arm." And I was literally in a sling, so I was like, "You guys are wild." So I take my arm out of the sling, and I'm like, "All right, I'll try and raise it." And I raised it probably, I don't know, like 10, 15 degrees. The physical therapists listen to this are like, this is a terrible, terrible idea. Do not share this information. So, but raised it like 10, 15 degrees. And then they're like, we're going to pray for you again. And I was like,
wow.
All right, here we
Accelerated PT and
so they
growth.
pray for me. They pray for my arm again, pray for movement, pray that the Lord's power kind of revitalizes it. And I started believing a little bit more. I raised it probably like 30, 45%.
Wow.
And then they're like, we're praying one more time. And I was like, okay.
Third time's a charm, man.
So we
prayed, threes.
We prayed again, and I was able to raise my arm all the way.
Wow.
So that was just a moment that the Lord really kind of, I would say, put his hand on me of this is going to be okay. Like, your life's not over type of thing.
Yeah.
I still went to physical therapy for 5 months just because it was such a grueling accident. And I really still did not have like full range of motion or anything like that. But it was just in that moment on that night, that was just the Lord's way of speaking to me and kind of comforting me through what was probably one of the biggest challenges that I've ever had to overcome.
How long ago was this?
This was 6 years ago now.
Wow. And you're all back to normal? Like you've got full range
100%. Yeah, I just swam today. So
nice, man.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Have you told that ever publicly before?
I've told it to like kind of like my friend group and stuff like that, but no, not really ever publicly.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, we'll have to clip that one. That's a sweet story.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. I guess mainstream culture has swung all over the place when it comes to just belief systems and practices and things like that. But recently, on a podcast that Andrew Huberman was on, I'm sure you know who Andrew Huberman is. He was talking about his, I guess, recent foray into like a spiritual walk with what he would say is Christ or God. And he's been talking a little bit about just like the power of prayer in his own life. And he's like starting to study, I guess, the neurological benefits of connecting with a higher power and just the self-reflection that it brings and all that stuff. So it's a cool time to be, I guess, a Christian. Yeah. So pretty neat stuff.
We might be in like the technological spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It'd be cool to see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. So you're in Oklahoma right now. Are you from Oklahoma originally? Like
I am not. I am from a little bit of everywhere. So my parents were in the military.
Okay.
I was born in Montana, lived there for 3 years. Then we moved to Italy.
Okay. Wow.
Lived there for 6 years.
Wow.
And then moved from there. It's actually kind of funny. I was talking to Nick Goldston. He runs TTL podcasts and stuff like that. And we're pretty good friends. But we were just chatting because his family is from Italy, and he lived actually in the village right next to ours. We were at the military base in Aviano, and his family was kind of in the village over about like 15 minutes away.
Oh, so, that's wild.
Do you speak crazy. Italian? No, not anymore. No.
But you did when you were younger.
When I was younger, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
For those 6 years, I basically like kind of somewhat learned it, I guess. Yeah. But if you don't practice it, it's like it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone totally.
So after Italy, we lived in New Mexico for 2 years, and then to Texas for 3 years. After that, we were in Utah for 3 years, and then moved to Oklahoma my junior year of high school, and then kind of just stayed ever since.
Okay, nice. And then you met Talbot when you were how old?
I met Talbot when I was 17.
17. So you've known him 15, for almost 15. What, half your life?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Literally best friends. So it's pretty awesome.
That is really neat.
The story of how we met, I met his brother, Joel. He comes from like a family of 8. So like if I reference his family and stuff like that, it's just, they're like, basically like my second family. So.
Exactly, yeah.
But I met his brother, Joel, and then we all went to, because the high school was like brand new in Moore. They basically had 2 high schools, and then they brought in a third one. So they took like 50% of the people from this high school, 50% of the people from this high school. And so my parents saw it as a perfect opportunity for us to move to that neighborhood rather than another city in Oklahoma City, just because it was easier for me to kind of adapt because kind of everyone's new to this high school. So they had like a mixer night, and we went to this like mini golf place, and Talbot was with like a couple of his friends because he was a grade lower than me, and
Okay.
he actually like hit one of the mini golf balls, like smacked it like a driver, and it like soared through the air, smacked me on the head,
Oh, dude.
and I think I was actually with his brother Joel at the time, and so Talbot like ran over, and Joel was like, "Dude, you just hit Kyle," and so that's kind of when we met, and um, in high school, the high school we went to, people kind of partied a lot and things like that. And Talbot and I never really, I mean, I never partied until probably college. So
hmm
that's kind of where our bond kind of started, was through like, we don't really drink or party or do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how our bond continued to grow and grow stronger. Is
Yeah.
usually Friday nights we'd go to high school football games, and then Saturdays we'd like go to the movies or stuff like that.
Yeah.
We did some crazy stuff, but that was
Yeah.
that was a little wild.
What
But
can we have a story?
we just did dumb things that high school kids did. I mean, we would go. There was a neighborhood that had like a bunch of trees and stuff like that, and so you couldn't really see, but they had this brick wall behind the trees.
hmm
So we'd go to the grocery store and pick up raw biscuits,
Okay.
and then we go and sit on this ledge, the brick wall, and then between the trees, we'd wait for a car to drive by. It was like at night, so you couldn't
Yeah.
see people and stuff. So we'd wait for a car to drive by, and we'd throw the biscuits and hit the cars and stuff. Looking back now, I'm like, dude, if that ever happened to me, I would lose it.
Yeah.
But back then, it was hilarious, and it
So
was
you
like,
said raw biscuits. It's like they're wet. They're not baked, so they
oh no,
stick.
yeah, they're wet. They stick. They're hard. Like when those things hit, you know that it hit the car because
Yeah.
it made like a significant noise.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah.
We did stuff like that as kids, but with snowballs from our front yard. So we were real stupid. And then
Yeah.
people would like slam on their brakes, slide, turn around, and come up to the house, and we'd be like sprinting it inside. Like,
Oh man.
mom's like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, nothing. Lock the doors." Yeah. So interesting childhood. So you grew up a little bit, you said in Italy, and then obviously back to the US. The Italy is not the average, I don't know, Paris Island or South Carolina or whatever, like where military families typically move. So were your parents like CIA operatives?
No.
What were they doing?
My mom was a dental hygienist actually for 10 years, and then the last, I don't know, 18 years she did kind of hospital administration stuff on the military base. And then my stepdad was air traffic control, so kind of like a little bit higher level. My dad did kind of security and stuff like that. So, and then my stepmom did dental as well. So it wasn't, I mean, it was just like a crazy time, I think, in the 90s. And I don't even know how they ended up going and getting stationed in Italy, but it's crazy to think that we were stationed there for 6 years. I guess
Yeah,
it was
that's a big
kind of
part of growing up.
crazy time during that,
Yeah.
but it was really cool. I mean, getting to go to, like, we went to Venice so many times. Like,
Cool.
for one Christmas break, we went to like Switzerland, Austria, Germany, a little bit of France. Like, I mean, I wouldn't trade any of those memories for anything. People
Yeah.
are like, "Do you remember it?" And it's like, whenever you're 6 years old, you remember like a lot of things that happened and stuff. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, and you moved there when you were 6, you said?
when
And
I
you were
was 3,
you were
and then we
3.
moved
Okay, so it's
away
3
when
to
I was
9.
9. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot of uh, multicultural experience at a young age. Like, do you feel like that helped shape who you are today and the way that you view the world?
That, and like having military parents, um, moving every 2 to 3 years basically forces you almost to make a choice of, am I going to be an introvert and just like be hyper focused on just like being reserved and being at home and reading books and things like that, and books have just never interested me. um, so I've always been kind of like a social butterfly. I like talking to people, I like being around
Good at
people,
making
I
friends.
like traveling. I have a lot of friends kind of around the world, and that's kind of the route I went. I've always been kind of hyper extroverted.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough as well because I'm also a people pleaser,
Mm,
and I care a lot about what other people think. So it's a dangerous game, but
sure.
it's all good.
You feel like the older you've gotten, you've been able to find a balance with that a little bit more, or say no to more things?
I feel like over the last 5 years, I've probably been a little bit better. I think I've come leaps and bounds. There's still a lot of things that I struggle with, especially like with running, like the ProTri news and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the I care a lot about the professional athletes that I'm really close with and really good friends with, and so there's obviously information or conversations or things like that I have that I I value those and I hold those very close, near and dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, then there will be things that people are like, "Oh, you guys need to do this, this, and this," and things like that, and it just like
Like as a
it,
company?
yeah, it just wears on you a little bit.
Mm.
I don't know that I should take everyone's advice, and I think that sometimes I try and make everyone happy, and I
That's
need to
really
work
hard to
on.
do.
Yeah, it's impossible to do. You
Yeah,
can't make
quite
everyone
impossible.
happy.
Yeah, exactly. Some of your followers are always going to be haters.
Yeah, and that's okay.
That's okay.
The biggest thing I try and do is we've always got a lot of flack for not getting the same amount of post race interviews as for men as we do or for women as we do for men. So like say we'll go to a race and we'll be able to get 8 men post race interviews, but then we only get like 3, and then people are like, "Oh, you guys don't care about women," and it's like,
You bigot.
dude, no, that's not what it is at all. And so
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of myself. At Oceanside this last weekend, I got 5 men interviews and 5 women
I
interviews.
saw that, dude. You cranked them
So
out. Yeah, good for
yeah,
you. Was that at all stressful, by the way? Because I saw like they were within a relatively short amount of time. Was it like, oh, I gotta get this? Like, how do you organize that? Or are you just like, hey, take this mic?
typically, we've started doing these. I think this is like the second year of doing the post race interview thing, and I feel like you can kind of feel the energy of the athlete of when a
100%.
good time is to ask for an interview and
Mm-hmm.
when a bad time is to ask for an interview.
When they're
And
crying,
so
good time.
typically I'll wait, I don't know, it's probably like 5-10 minutes until they finish the race and things like that. But there's also like the logistics part of it of that you don't see is they got to get ready. They got to do a post race interview with Ironman, and then they'll be free. But they only go with those at like one at a time. So if you're able to sneak one of those, then it's like awesome.
Yeah.
But then after that, they do the podium ceremony. And so after they do the podium ceremony, then usually you're like, you have to be quick on the ball or they're out.
Yeah.
Ironman started doing a really good job of getting like a media table kind of like set up to where
Nice.
the athletes can like cool down and like chill. They
Take
have
a
to
sip.
sign like the finisher banner and just like take a second. And so typically that's like what we were able to do at the race this weekend in Oceanside was like, hey, while they're taking a break or whatever, let's talk about the race for
Yeah.
2 to 5 minutes of
Yeah.
like the race from your perspective.
Yeah.
So everyone sees the race kind of live, but it's good, I think, to get the insight from the athlete's brain of like, okay, whenever Sam Long was pushing 450 watts on each climb, like what was going through your head, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. Are you traveling to every pro series race this year?
We'll try. I will
Nice.
try. It's
It's
a
a lot.
challenge because there's a lot of races. I don't think I'm going to make it to Chattanooga, unfortunately.
Ah, bummer. That's all
But
I cared about.
yeah, I think I'll be at Ironman Texas here in a couple weeks.
Okay.
Be at St. George, and then that may be the extent of the Ironman series that I go to. I believe Talbot's going to go to quite a bit.
To chat.
I don't think he'll go to Chattanooga because he'll just follow Lionel. So
Yeah.
Chattanooga might be a different one. I don't know how many people are going to be able to go to that one. So
Yeah,
it's
we'll
also
see.
hard because I'm like trying to train now too. So
Yeah,
I got to
yeah.
get my long runs and long rides in on the
Yeah.
weekends, and I don't
That's
really
hard with traveling.
want to travel with my bike and do all that stuff.
Yeah, that stinks. And
So
what's your next race? What are you training for?
I am training for 70.3 Hawaii.
Okay, nice. When is that?
So
It's in
that
like
is June 1st.
June 1st. Nice, man.
But I don't know if I would say that I'm going to race. I think I'm going to participate, but I don't know that I'm going to be ready to race. My goal is to probably try and race the T100 race in Las Vegas. I think that race series is going to be awesome, and the venue is great. The climbs out of Lake Mead area is unreal.
Yeah.
So,
You know, it'd be sick is if they had them racing on the F1 course.
dude, that would be
That's
like down the strip, so they can't really. That'd
I know,
be
but
pretty
how amazing
impossible.
would that be?
It would be awesome.
That'd be
That's
so
like
sick.
one of my goals. Is I'm a big Formula One fan, and so the Ironman in Portugal actually they go on the Formula One track.
Oh, sick!
So
that's awesome.
That's probably one of my life goals. My 5 to 10 year goal, is to do Ironman Portugal.
There you go.
So,
that's awesome.
But
who you pulling for in the Constructors' Cup? Then what team? And then who's your favorite driver?
Ferrari is my favorite team.
Okay, Scuderia.
Yep. I think it's just living in Italy. Like I've always had like a passion for that.
You could pass for Italian too. You got that darker eyes, complexion, all that stuff. Cool, man.
There we go. And then the driver is Charles
Leclerc.
Yeah. So
I think he's one of the best looking dudes on there too.
Give me 1 second. Let me grab a water real quick.
Yeah, no worries. So my next question is, how did Kyle get to where he is today? So obviously you're with ProTri News, so you can tell me that story. But before that, you're with Cory Connects, and I'm sure that wasn't your first job out of college. So what was the timeline and that gave you the different experiences and jobs that led to where you are today?
You're about to have your mind blown. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
So
I started working when I was 16 years old, and I've always been kind of the worker type. I've always loved having a job and like the kind of the schedule and the structure of it. So I started working when I was 16, worked at a pizza place in Utah. And then during the summer, there was a summer that I didn't go to see my dad in Virginia because I think he was deployed in the Middle East or something. Okay. And so during that summer, I loved working the pizza place so much, but my dream job was to work at the movie theater.
Dream job. Love it.
So I worked at the pizza place and at the movie theater for that summer. So I literally worked from sun up to sundown. Wow. I loved the grind. I love going to movies. Movies are my favorite. I love popcorn. Like there's nothing in this world that's better than a good bowl of popcorn with butter. So for me, I worked at the pizza place and then the movie theater, and then the end of the summer came and I was like, okay, I got to quit one of these. And so I decided to quit the pizza job, which sucked, but it was fine. So worked at the movie theater, 16, 17, moved to Oklahoma. There was a brand new movie theater and I worked there. After that, I was a server. So I did serving in high school from 17, 18. And then I went off to college. Did college for about a semester, partied way too much, had probably one of the worst GPAs ever because I felt like it was more important for me to be having fun and partying rather than going to school. So my parents were basically like, you need to come home until you figure out what your actual priority is. All so right. Was in school for a semester and then was basically at my parents' house not knowing what to do with my life. My mom went to the local 7-Eleven with gave me 4 quarters and told me to go buy a newspaper and look for a job. So
good mom.
Got the newspaper and saw that Coca-Cola was hiring and worked at Coca-Cola for 5 years, filling vending machines.
Oh, sick. Like driving, so you're driving, you're unloading, you're
driving a truck and filling vending machines.
Wow.
So that was from 2010 to 2015. I also worked in retail, like in between those, because I was like, well, I'm not going to school, so I could have another job. So I worked at this place called Metro Shoe Warehouse here in Oklahoma City, and the owner of Metro Shoe Warehouse in Oklahoma City, I don't think people understand. his name's Heath. There's multiple owners, but Heath is like the main guy.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Heath have always had like a pretty close bond. He's always been the type that he's always kind of believed in me, and I don't know if he's like seen something in me or something like that, but he's always been kind of a good role model for me of like, if you work super freaking hard, you can build something that people love and will continue to kind of use. Now, retail is different, obviously, than a triathlon podcast, but I ran into him on my way to Oceanside, and it was just like very meaningful to see him. And then he was just asking about kind of like my life and where I'm at and stuff right now. So, massive shout out to Heath, because he was definitely very formative in my rebellion stage, I would guess you could say.
He gave you some guidance.
Yeah, and Metro Shoe kind of has this weird. I don't know if I should say weird, but they have this standard of like, we don't ever hire people back. If they quit, we don't hire them back.
Okay.
And I quit to go back to school at the end of, I don't know, July or whatever of that year, and did a semester of school, studied really hard, did really good, and then Heath called me on this, I think it was like Thanksgiving, the week before Thanksgiving, and he was like, we want to hire you for the Christmas rush, and they don't hire people back. So it was really meaningful that he reached out and I was able to go and work with them.
Yeah.
Kind of during that time. But all right, so filled vending machines for 5 years. At this time, I started falling in love with triathlon in 2012. And so that's when I completely dropped out of college. And I was like, I helped Talbot with, he started kind of a kids triathlon team here in Oklahoma. And basically I just helped him out with that, kind of training kids and stuff like that, enjoying the life of working and then also playing. 2012 is also the year that we went down to my first ever triathlon, was experiencing 70.3 Galveston, 70.3 Texas, and 2012. Lance Armstrong was racing, and that was the most insane thing I've ever seen in my entire life. The people, it was like, I don't know, probably like 4 people deep. It was still to date probably one of the biggest triathlon audiences I've ever seen.
Just because Lance pulled a huge community.
It was insane. Wow. Absolutely insane. And then I met people from Nike that were there, just like they're supporting him and stuff. And I'm like looking down at their shoes and stuff, because I'm like, I've always been like a huge sneakerhead, and I'm like, what kind of shoes are they wearing? And they're all wearing prototype Nike shoes and stuff. So
that's cool.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So 2012 was kind of whenever I started falling in love with the sport and doing triathlons. I did my first ever triathlon that year, pool swim race in Oklahoma. And I was a terrible swimmer. I think I swam like 2 minutes per 100 or something.
Love it.
And then biked like 15 miles an hour. But running's always kind of been like my thing, my forte. And I think I ran like pretty quick for not really training and like diving in, but like 21 minutes for 5K off the bike.
Okay, nice. That's awesome.
So, anyways, fast forward 2015 was when Talbot had this friend. His name was Britt, and Britt contacted him and was like, "Hey, I want to hire you for this hotel that we just got an in-house contract with." And Britt is now an owner and partner in Cory Connects. So he was like, "Hey, I want to hire you." And Talbot was like, "I'm moving to Colorado. I'm going to do software engineering. I'm moving to Boulder. But you should call Kyle." And so at this point, I was like fed up with filling vending machines. It was like a mundane job. I got
just pulling a lever.
Yeah, I mean, I was working from like 5 a.m. until like 1 p.m. And then that's whenever I would probably take like afternoon classes or things like that. So he reached out to me. We go and grab lunch at Arby's. We have a good interview. And he goes, "Do you know anything about audiovisual?" And I said, "No." And he said, okay, we'll teach you for 2 weeks. And then after that, you have a 2-month period where you're like kind of like under watch. And if you can pick it up within the next 2 weeks, we'll give you the 2 months. But if you can't pick it up in the 2 weeks, you're like, we'll have to go a different direction. I was like, all right. So I'm literally Googling like everything under the sun about audiovisual, like how to connect an HDMI cord, like how to focus a projector, how to mix audio, things like that. I went to Talbot's dad actually has a friend that owns an audiovisual company. They do a lot of like churches and things like that. And I went and basically shadowed him for a weekend before I started my training.
Nice.
So I was like ready to just dive in 100%. And I'll never forget whenever I left Coca-Cola and the vending machine company, the general manager, I was in his office because at the time I was like a trainer. I was doing like a whole bunch of things for them. And I'll never forget, I came into his office and I sat down with him. And he said, why would you ever want to go and do something that you don't know how to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked at him and he said, I just don't think that you're cut out for that. People like you aren't cut out for hotel audiovisual jobs. And that's when I drew kind of a line in the sand and I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to prove that person wrong.
Mm.
And so that kind of just stuck out in the back of my mind. So from 2015 to 2019, I worked for Cory Connects in a hotel conference center capacity. I was kind of like a jack of all trades. I did the sales, but then I also did the operations part. So like setting up for the events and things like that. I also had a very significant mentor in that. Her name is Tasha Hauk. She taught me basically how to sell and how to create an experience for people that the answer is always yes. And when you're in sales and when you're in hospitality and when you're in the event industry, the answer is always yes. How you get there will change based on the event, the company, the situation, but the answer is always yes. Mm. And so that kind of just stuck with me. She helped me so much and believed in me beyond measure. And I could never repay her for kind of the mentorship that she gave me for those 4 years that I was at the hotel. So
that's awesome.
2019, I left the hotel. Cory's decided they want to start building out kind of the commercial audiovisual side of the company. So 2019 was kind of a crazy year for me. 2019, I stopped working at the hotel in May, went for 10 days to Ireland, which if you've never been to Ireland, hands down,
on the list.
One of the most beautiful countries I've ever been to in my life. Wow. Went to Ireland, and then for 2 months, I was on the install crew. So I was like with them in the trenches, learning how to like run wire, learning how they install speakers, install TVs on the wall, microphones, all that stuff. So for 2 months, I did that, and then we had a new CRM. New CRM that was announced, and so basically my job is to learn all the ins and outs of the CRM. So I'm proficient in the CRM that we have, and if I ever leave the company, it will be bad because I don't think I can learn another CRM. CRMs are insanely difficult to master and learn, and I don't think I have the mental capacity to be able to learn a new CRM.
But I'm just curious, is it like a Salesforce build or what's?
It's similar to that. It's called Q360.
Okay.
But I've heard of them. It is wild. Yeah. So learned the CRM, and then I basically was an assistant from 2019, end of 2019 to the beginning of 2023. And then essentially Britt and our other sales manager, they would go out on site visits, and then we'd kind of brainstorm and kind of put together a scope of work and then a quote for clients based on what their needs and solutions were. Basically the solution to solve the problem they had.
Sure.
So did that. Basically was assistant for that, and then assisted with like our service team and stuff like that. And then 2023, So now a year now, actually, as of April 1st,
Nice.
kind of been on my own as far as like account executive. So building relationships with clients, building proposals, and kind of coming up with visions for different projects.
That's awesome.
So
and you really enjoy it now. Like you proved that person wrong, and you really like it.
Yeah, I love my job.
That's awesome.
That's the hard thing is people are like, why don't you just do the podcast full time? And it's like, I love my coworkers, I love my job, and I love the clients that we get to work with. Yeah. And I love nothing more than showing people that technology doesn't have to be intimidating and it doesn't have to like wreck your day.
Yeah.
There's nothing I hate more than people being like, well, we spent 15 minutes trying to get this Zoom room set up. Yeah. And it's like, it shouldn't be that hard. Yeah. And I'm sorry that the person before me made it so difficult that you guys think you have to have a technology degree to be able to use your Zoom conference room.
So you're doing this. Obviously, it takes a good bit of your time. You're changing lives. You're loving what you do. But what you do with ProTri News, like that obviously must take some time. So what's the divvy up in hours look like?
For ProTri News?
Yeah, versus what you're doing with Cory Connects.
I'm probably pushing 40, 50 hours with Cory Connects any given week. Podcast, I mean, it depends. Do you consider time watching races as time for ProTri News? Because
I mean,
Saturdays and Sundays, kind of whenever racing starts to heat up, I mean, I will sit in front of the TV and watch triathlon races. Yeah. So it helps that it's not really during football season. So gives me something to watch other than Formula One. But I love watching triathlon races, and the athletes really know how to put on a show for us. Yeah. But probably the hours, I'm probably pushing, I don't know, probably like 10 to 20 hours a week. Depends on how many ideas and things like that I have. Because people ask me all the time, they're like, how do you think of the graphics? Or how do you think of like what you're going to post? And it's just like an idea that comes to my brain. And I'm like, I got to do a graphic real quick on this. I've started to have to bring that back because a question we get a lot is, are we media? Are we news? Or are we opinion? And I've really tried to kind of float all three of those lines for the last 4 seasons that ProTri News has kind of been a thing. And now I'm really trying to be a little bit more of a journalist in a sense of reaching out to Ironman and saying, do you have a statement about this?
Get a comment. Like your recent Singapore
PTO.
post.
Yeah, PTO, do you have a comment about this? World Triathlon, do you have a comment about this? But they've also gotten to the point where they're like, well, we just want to come on your podcast and talk about it. And it's like, that's great. I'd love to have the CEO of all these major organizations come on our podcast and explain it. What is going on? So it's been a challenge because I've put a lot of energy and effort into ProTri News. I used to spend 4 or 5 hours a week, or 4 or 5 hours per episode editing.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
In the beginning, because I literally had no idea on how to edit. That's why our audio sounded so bad. And I just got lazy and I was like, well, now that we have like a little bit of disposable income, or we'll just take money out of my bank account, I'll just buy everyone really good mics and then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So it was, in the beginning, I think I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy on it. It was originally actually started. We didn't originally start as a podcast. A lot of people think we originally started as a podcast. We originally started as a way for us to get media credentials because we wanted to get closer to the professional athletes. And so that's why we started ProTri News originally. I think we started it actually in 2019, but it was like a dormant account until 2021.
Okay, nice. So what kind of changed that? Like you realized, oh, there's interest here that we could serve a need, or like what caused you to actually make it legit at that point?
Coming out of COVID, there was no races or anything like that. And me, Talbot, and Patrick Lemieux, Talbot Cox, Patrick Lemieux, would sit on a phone call after every race weekend and just kind of talk about what we think happened. Oh, did Javier Gomez, did he race as good as we think he could race, or did he like leave stuff on the table? Oh, is Gwen Jorgensen, is she enjoying what she's doing running right now, or does she wish she was back in triathlon? Or is Lionel Sanders ever going to be close to winning a world championship ever again? So we would all have these conversations of like what happened at 70.3 Oceanside 2019 or whatever. Yeah. And we would all talk about it. But after COVID, I think that we felt that it was a space that was missing in triathlon. Triathlon's kind of a loop, right? So you do your first sprint distance race, then you do your first Olympic distance race, then you do a 70.3, and then maybe you do an Ironman. And then after this Ironman, you kind of come to a fork in the road. Do I repeat the cycle, or do I start the cycle from a different position? Did I just enjoy doing sprint distance, Olympic distance, 70.3 or Ironman, and I'll just continue to do those? Or you feel like you're lonely and on your own island, and you're like, I can't resonate with anyone, or I don't know any of the professionals, or I don't know a way that I can, like, I feel like this pit that I'm just doing triathlon and no one else is doing triathlon. And so our goal is to kind of bring that back and show to people like the professional triathlon world is incredible and it is amazing. And the people are just normal people that are exceptional athletes. And so if we're able to bring them back and continue to have them be kind of a lifetime, like make yourself a triathlete for the rest of your life, then that's going to be okay. Like that's all right to be known as the triathlete in your office or whatever. Yeah. And so the podcast was basically, we wanted to bring the professionals to the audience and like make them seem like they're also human, and they struggle with others. They struggle with injury. They struggle with getting divorced. They struggle with relationships. They struggle with adapting to the volume versus the speed. They struggle with deciding if they want to quit their job and be a professional triathlete full time. So there's all things like professional athletes struggle with some of the same stuff as everyone else.
Sure.
Just in a different capacity. Yeah. So we wanted to bring the audience something that they can enjoy each and every week. And we've been fortunate to, I think that a lot of people are very secretive with their podcast numbers, rightfully so. I mean, it's something that the only people that need to know about it are your partners. But we kind of want to change that, and we're very transparent with our numbers. People ask us all the time. In the beginning, our numbers were, the first year we averaged about 4,000 downloads an episode. Second year we averaged about 8,000. Third year we averaged about 15,000. And then this year we've been pushing 20,000 downloads each episode.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
So, yeah. It's grown more than I could have ever even imagined. I thought we were probably going to be at that 4,000 mark forever. And I actually went through a bit of a struggle. I mean, Patrick Lemieux, I tell him all the time about how I'm like, I just don't think anyone cares or anyone listens and things like that. Not anymore, but in the beginning I was ready to quit a lot. Like, yeah, it was a lot of energy, a lot of effort. I had like a full-time job, and it took a lot to get kind of this plane off the ground. Sure. It's like a jumbo jet. Yeah. And like once that thing got off the ground, we realized that there's not really any way to stop this. Yeah. Like if ProTri News stopped, this is very kind of prideful, but I feel like the sport could suffer. Yeah.
I mean, that's got to feel nice to be able to step out your door or go to bed each night and realize that what you're doing like makes an impact. I think that's what most people search for sometimes their entire life without ever getting that feedback for the inspiration that it creates. So congratulations. I mean, that's super inspiring.
Thanks. Yeah. And it's like the podcast also can say things that the athletes can't say. So we have like a really good relationship with a lot of the professional athletes, but they can't speak out against their federation, or they can't speak out against Ironman, or they can't speak out against PTO. but we can kind of be that mouthpiece for them and like shed a big ugly light on something that maybe people are thinking about, but they aren't able to say. And so our biggest thing is being an advocate for the athletes. Obviously, our biggest goal is to get the professional athletes more pay, better benefits, and make it to where this sport is actually something that you can do for your whole life and not have to worry financially that this is not going to work, because you are a professional athlete. Like, it doesn't matter if you're athlete ranked number 1, like Christian Blumenfeld, or if you're athlete ranked number 469, which I don't know who that is right now, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Our goal is to continue to help grow the professional athlete fan and grow the fan base. So
yeah. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is even with or within or without, within or outside of, I guess, triathlon, if they wanted to grow a podcast or a news agency or a journalistic based organization?
You have to keep grinding, and you cannot give up.
Going. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
It's good business startup advice to anybody.
That would be the biggest piece of advice that I would say.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to quit so many times. Like, it's unreal the amount of times I wanted to quit. Even like, I think after a year I was like, I don't know how many people really care this much about professional triathlon. Maybe there was a reason why. Back in the day, there used to be this guy named Ben Hobbs. Ben Hobbs started the Real Starkey. And that was, I'm so grateful that they started it when they did, because if they would have started it now, it would have been absolutely insane. Like, their channel was the best.
Really?
They were like a combination of Triathlon Mockery, ProTri News, and the Triathlon Hour. Okay. They were all three of those together, and then they created a website that was rivaling. How do I say that word?
Rivalry?
Rivaling?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're rivaling Slow Twitch. And so having a channel like that back in the early teens, like 2012 to 2000, I think they stopped maybe 2016.
Well, I wonder why.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories about that.
Dun, 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 dun. Kyle Glass put them under the gun and said, "Do not."
No, not a chance. But I'm so grateful for Ben Hobbs, and I met him actually, I think, in Ironman Texas 2016, 2015.
Okay.
But their channel is what we kind of try, and that's what we kind of built the shell around. Now, we didn't follow every single thing that they did. They did a lot of like kind of crazy stuff. Like, at one point, they gave Raymond Botello, professional triathlete, a giant poster board check that said like 7th place, and it was like $0 because at the time Ironman didn't pay past 6th place, and so it was like this big PR stunt that they did and things like that. Yeah. That, I mean, they help the professional athletes in that sense of now. Ironman pays. I mean, still not really good enough in my opinion, but they pay all the way to 8th. They play to 8th place at most big races. So, but if you look back at like 70.3 Oceanside this weekend, there was like 60, 70 dudes on the start list and only 8 got paid.
Yeah, that's a lot.
There was 30, 40 women on the start list, but only 8 got paid.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's tough.
So let me ask you a question. What does triathlon like mean to you? Like, what does it evoke in your emotional and spiritual well-being?
I struggle with what I call ADHD. It's not medically diagnosed, but my mind goes about 300 miles an hour nonstop. And whenever I'm training, literally my only focus is to get through that session or that set or that workout.
Hyper-focus.
And so for me, it's just so good for my mental health to be able to focus on one thing and not have to pick up my phone or pick up a phone call or worry about what I'm going to have for dinner or what I'm going to have for breakfast or what client meeting do I have going on later today. So triathlons helped me in that sense, but also I raced quite a bit, like just locally in Oklahoma from 2012 to 2017, and I loved nothing more than getting on a start line. And there's nothing really like it. I could never imagine racing at the professional level.
Sure.
And the feelings of like the anxiety and all of that kind of like elevated because you're fighting for like a paycheck rather than just sitting here and doing triathlons as a weekend warrior. I loved racing so much that pushing yourself beyond what you think is possible or what other people think is possible of you and being able to suffer is something that I truly enjoy.
Yeah, there's something about the, like you said, the quieting of the mind to focus on one thing. I think Mark Allen was sharing one of the episodes I did with just what was his biggest unlocking point to move to the next level. I think from a mental standpoint, but also from a performance standpoint, was the ability to quiet your mind and just do what you're going to do and do what you can do the best that you can do it. Because I think a lot of us have a lot of this internal chatter that even can still invade the sessions that we do or the focused work that we're supposed to be working on. Like, oh, I can't do this. Oh, it's too hurt. Oh, it's too painful. Blah, 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 blah. But being able to just accept where you are and kind of quiet the mind and do the work, I think is freeing in a lot of ways. So,
but then it translates also to just like work life and things like that. Of I get into a situation where I'm like, shoot, I have like 8 proposals I got to get done at work. And then I'm like, okay, grind, got to get it done and persevere.
Yeah.
And that's just like triathlon kind of helps in those brain waves of like, there's so many times in a race where you're like, I want to walk. I just want to walk. And you kind of have to like talk yourself out of it and coach yourself out of it. And doing those things, doing things that are hard. I think it's, is it, who was talking about that recently? I think it was Andrew Huberman, maybe?
Yeah, it was. The adenosine receptor and the anterior mid-singular cortex doing hard things, and you do it, and it grows that part of the brain.
Right. So I think my brain's pretty big compared to my small head. So
yeah, but it's still growing. It has the opportunity to continue to grow.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. To me, triathlon is kind of my second job. So
yeah,
just from a media standpoint, and going to races and hanging out with people and kind of just being friends with everyone.
Yeah. So along those lines, a few more questions. Are you, well, let me ask it this way. As you've grown, like even just with the numbers you shared, more and more people, obviously they've heard your voice, but now they're coming to know your face more. And as an individual, because you've grown in notoriety within this sport, has that affected you in any way, just as you've kind of grown in popularity?
I don't think so.
Does it make you feel any sort of way?
Same. I feel like I'm kind of the same person. It makes me feel like there's no feeling like when someone comes up to a race and they're like, "Hey, I really love your guys' podcast. You guys are awesome." That makes me feel amazing, and there's no amount of that will ever make that feeling kind of go away, because I remember uploading our first episode and thinking, putting this in the universe, and we're like, well, we'll see what happens.
Hope somebody listens.
Hope someone listens. It's not just my mom. So it makes you feel really good when people kind of engage with you and you're not just uploading something onto the internet. Like it's a real tangible thing that people listen to each and every week. And it means so much. I mean, I was walking with, this is kind of like a personal story, but I was walking with the owner of the feed, and the feed sponsors so many people, so many successful triathletes. They sponsor very successful triathlon podcasts with Jack Kelly and Triathlon Hour. And I was walking with the owner. We had just like met and we were just chit chatting, walking to the start of the T100 race in Miami, and some random fan comes up to me and goes, "I really love your guys' podcast. You guys are amazing. You have to keep doing what you guys are doing." And Matt looks at me and he goes, "What's your podcast?" And I was like, "ProTri News." And he was like, "Oh, wow." So it's just like things like that, especially whenever it's an impression in front of like a massive organization like the feed, it just like, it makes you feel like $1,000,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I struggled a lot, even still sometimes, of like finding my identity in that rather than my identity in Christ. And um, I'm still learning that my identity is not just in a triathlon podcast.
Yeah.
It is my soul is worth more than just that.
Mm. So what do you have to do to keep that at bay? Because
Quiet
pride
time.
wants to grow.
Quiet time every
Quiet
day.
time. Quiet
Yep.
time every day. Yeah. 100%. So let me ask you just, I guess, one more question. What advice would you give to someone looking for love in their work? Because you obviously love what you do, and a lot of people in this world, they don't have that. So how would you? Someone's like, "Man, Kyle, I really want to find that in life, and I feel so empty." What would you tell them?
Not to find your fulfillment and your enjoyment in work.
Yeah.
A big thing that I've always focused on is you're going to work regardless, and the Lord's going to provide a way for you to live financially, regardless of what you do or where you work or things like that. Um, that faucet's always going to be there. You can choose a different hose if you want, but
Sure.
something that my parents have always said is the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't. And even if you're working a job that you absolutely hate, there is ways to find like joy and fulfillment in that. You can find your joy and fulfillment in working out, or you find your joy and fulfillment with taking your dog on a walk every evening or every morning before you go to work. And then work is going to be a grind, regardless of where you work or who you work for. Each boss that you have is going to test you and challenge you. Sometimes it's for your growth, and sometimes it's for their growth. So you just have to kind of just put your face to the brimstone and kind of just grind.
Yeah.
In the Bible, it says that we're meant to toil under the sun until the Lord comes back. So that's just kind of that's kind of what I think about is work can, you can either say work's going to be fun for me today, or you can wake up and be like, oh, I have to go to work today.
Yeah.
And so I have found so much joy in having like other passions. You may have to find a passion that you enjoy and a hobby that helps make the mundaneness and the frustrations of work kind of just like go away.
Yeah. Great answer. Yeah, it reminds me of this book I read. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. If you haven't, well, you don't like books, but there's audiobooks of it. It's a really good listen. It's called The Hiding Place. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, by Cory Connects. So she's this lady who lived during the Holocaust. And anyway, long story short, she was Jewish. She got found out for keeping people, or no, she wasn't Jewish. She got found out for keeping people. Anyway, her and her sister got thrown into a concentration camp. Can't remember if it was Treblinka or Auschwitz, but she tells a story of basically at the end of her sister's life, they're in the middle of winter in this camp, and they're being shoved into like these basically hen houses where they have to sleep. And her sister is more of the glass is half full type of situation, and how she views life. Her sister's dying. She's literally on her deathbed. They're laying in the middle of the night in the cold, and there's fleas biting them constantly from just like these infested, sheets or whatever that they gave them to sleep on these straw beds, and bed bugs, and they're getting bit. And she just kind of breaks down, Cory, and she's like complaining to her sister, basically like, "This is terrible. I was dead." Da, 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 da. And her sister, I can't remember exactly what she says, but she exudes this attitude that, hey, like, this is where we are. We can find positivity in anything. And I forget what exactly she finds positivity in. Maybe it's in like the roof over their head or whatnot. And she shares that, and it really, shakes her sister, because, they're in this obviously terrible situation. If anybody has an opportunity to complain and should, it would be them.
Yeah.
But she finds joy and peace in that time, and she ends up dying like the next day. And that just like hit me straight between the eyes. It's like, if you can be in literally the darkest point of hell on earth and have that attitude, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Like they can steal anything, they being like the evil that is outside or within. But if you can find joy and peace in those moments, then in that quiet place, it's quite a earth shattering philosophical idea and belief.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, well, Kyle, thank you so much for jumping on and for making the time for me to ask some questions for you to answer. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and looking forward to see ProTri News take over and hopefully influence and continue to shape the sport.
Thanks, Seth. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that it took us 16 times to finally get to record.
That's all right.
So I appreciate your patience and persistence to get this done.
Yeah, 16th time's a charm, as they say.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, man. Thank you so much to Kyle for coming on the podcast and sharing a little bit about who he is, where he is going in life. It's been really neat to hear about who he is on air and off air, just getting to connect on some pretty deep topics and hear about his vendetta and future that he has planned for the Tri News and the boys and the pros all around the world and Ironman, PTO, T100, all that stuff. So thank you again so much for listening. If you made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much. Your likes, comments, subscribes, reviews, anything you can do to help share and boost awareness for the podcast really does help. Thank you so much for that. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do that at the stupidquestions.show website. There's a link at the top and a place to enter your email at the bottom of that website. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you again so much to Kyle and ProTri News. Going to try to have on more of those guys here soon to hear their stories. I think that those stories are important ones to be heard. But remember that anybody can be an inspiration, including yourself, and we will catch you in the next one.